Welcome everyone to Breaking Big Blue. I'm your host, Jordan Raanan on ESPN, ESPN.com. I hope I just ruptured your eardrums there, coming off a 40-37. Really a wild game, but I'm going to take you through that post-game locker room, kind of what that was like afterwards. The 40-37 loss to the Cowboys. Really, the Giants should have won the game. Penalties galore. That's disgusting part of it. Offense looked great for the most part. Russell Wilson looked as good as you could. I mean, be honest, and I expected Russ to have a good game here or there. That's beyond good game for 99% of it. Now, the overtime wasn't great, but I'm not going to sit here, and I'll start with this. First of all, Breaking Big Blue Times, Giants Sports Nation collab. That's what we're here for. A Giants Nation show. What did I say? Giants Sports Nation? Did I just say that, Bobby?
We're trying to make this more and more like an old ESPN show, Sports Nation.
Yeah, that was a slip. Giants Nation. I caught myself, though. So, yeah, Bobby's going to be in here soon because I know, when I've gotten feedback from a lot of people, that's one of the things they like the both of us together. So we're going to try to prioritize that a bit. But first, I just want to go over and take you through some thoughts from the game, some of the stuff that went on in the locker room after. I think where I want to start, and we'll save the Shane Bowen stuff because obviously the end of that was gross. Brian Daboll talked about it a little bit today, but I think we should start with where this team is overall. 40-37. They're now 0-2, okay? 0-2 for the second straight year. 0-2 for, what was it, the seventh time in 9 years. I think it's 9-12. Just bad numbers, right? And 0-2, essentially, we could sit here and rewind. Your season's over. You can't even pretend where this is headed because they got the 0-2 desperate Chiefs coming for their home opener. Then the Chargers, who are a pretty good team. And then they get New Orleans, a quick 1 week respite. And then the Eagles, 2 out of 3. So you can't even pretend like this team is going to be in the mix. Like, that's already over. Now, to me, this game, I see people already asking about Jameis and the Bengals. We'll get to that. We'll do questions later on. So save those questions for a minute, okay? 40-37. They lose. They're 0-2. So you can't, like I said, you can't even pretend like, you know what, maybe they can make a run. You can't even have that hope. Now, I don't think anyone really went into the season with playoff expectation. If you did, you probably were unrealistic. But you shouldn't by week 3 or 4 be like, all right, well, we're building towards next season already. That's demoralizing. And that's pretty much where this is going. If they end up at the first, 7 games, 2-5, I mean, that's going to be like a success at this point. So that's where they are as a whole. And that's where it takes me to Brian Daboll. Because when I watched that post-game press conference and I was in there, Brian Daboll came in there, and me personally, I watched that game, and as somebody who's no emotional connection to either team, right? I just cover it. I'm neutral. I watched that game like that was a very entertaining game. The Giants did a lot of good things. At least they showed something offensively. Now, you hear Giants fans, they're irate. They can't believe they lost this game. This team doesn't know how to win. They suck again. That's what you hear. And then you hear Brian Daboll, and he comes in, and he's demoralized. Okay? Despondent almost, right? That was a hard one to take. This one hurts is actually what he said. He said it several times. This one hurts. And you could see it by looking at him. And look, Brian Daboll, who's an offensive guy, who hasn't seen his offense do very much recently, like when they, played well against Indianapolis, or remember he's sitting there, and anytime they play well offensively, you could see at least it gives them a little something, a little feel. And they did that in this game. That's what their offense is supposed to look like with Russell Wilson. The deep shots, hitting those deep shots. At one point, he was 7 of 8 on throws of air yards, 20-plus yards. 7 of 8. That's ridiculous. You think about that for a second. You're talking about like almost 90%-ish on throws 20-plus yards in the air. That's how good he was. So I'm not going to sit here and blame Russell Wilson. I know some people are like, look, he made 2 plays in overtime that hurt them. He also threw a touchdown pass to Wandale down the seam in the fourth quarter. Huge play on 4th down. He threw a pass to Malik Neighbors, a strike, again, right down the seam, basically, for a touchdown that should have been the game-winning score with 25 seconds left. So I'm not going to sit here and rip Russell Wilson, who threw for 450 yards, and say he cost him the game. I have heard some people say that today. Ridiculous. So Brian Daboll is then monotone, down, despondent after the game. To me, what that means, and the feeling I get when I see that, is that he's feeling the pressure, that he's feeling the heat. He knows 0-2. He sees what's on deck. He sees where this is headed. He's coming off 3-14, where he didn't feel great about keeping his job at some point late last year. He thought he was in trouble. So he gets a reprieve. And now he starts off 0-2. Ownership's not taking well to 0-2. You can say whatever you want to John Mara, and I question myself, how good a football guy is he considering the product they put on the field the last, we go back to 2013, basically. So the past 13 seasons, I could question how much of a football guy he is. The one thing I won't question is that it matters to him. And it kills him and it eats him up. Eats him up when they lose games. Doesn't matter when, where. You see him after the game, it looks like, his dog passed away when they lose a game. So it matters to him. So there is pressure on Brian Daboll. That's what that said to me when I saw Brian Daboll come in there for the post-game press conference. And you heard him today, on the day after I was on the plane on the way home. You hear him today not giving full explanations and just being short and kind of, not trying to say anything. Create any sort of extra drama, because he doesn't need that at this point. Being very closed off. So to me, it means that. It means that Brian Daboll is feeling the pressure. That's what I took from that. Now, Russ, I said it before. I'm not going to blame him. You throw for 450 yards and do the damage that he did. That's a game, right? That's what the Giants were hoping their offense would look like. They have the vertical threats. That's what Russell Wilson does well. They would also like to run the ball a little bit. We'll talk about that later. The interior of the offensive line is a problem. James Hudson was a total disaster. The 12 penalties, we could kind of, put that into the whole Daboll thing like that. Look, that reflects poorly on the head coach. Sorry, 14 penalties. 14 for 160. By the way, flagged 21 times. Like that's, you would say the Giants got flagged 21 times in the game. That would be a joke if I said that to you. And I see all these comments over here about Shane Bowen. I'm not going there either. You got to get rid of Shane. Look, the Giants' problem for the past 4 years has primarily been their offense. They already scapegoated one defensive coordinator, right? And I get it. There's legitimate complaints about Shane Bowen. But to sit here and want to scapegoat another defensive coordinator, come on. Think about it for a second. The offense has been dreadful and it wasn't this specific game, but the offense has been dreadful for 3 years. And we want the defensive coordinator fired again? I'm not going to go down that road. I'm sorry. I'm not going to be here and say, you'll scapegoat another defensive coordinator. Come on. Look at the big picture. Think about it for a second. That's crazy talk. Now, we have complaints about Shane Bowen. I get it. I totally get it. Okay? And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Bobby, I know, wants to chime in on that. But as the whole Russ thing, and it was extremely notable to me that Russ gets up there and he's talking about the game and he mentions there's been a lot of noise recently. Okay? Russell Wilson, who always claims he doesn't listen, he doesn't hear, he believes in himself, all this other stuff. There's been a lot of noise lately. That, to me, says that Russell Wilson heard all the calls for Jackson Dart. He was asked questions about it. He knows about it. And he felt the pressure on himself. And so, to be honest with you, he came out big. That might have saved his starting career. Think about it. He's on his fourth team in 5 years. There's not a lot of starting jobs out there for Russell Wilson anymore. He doesn't play well. And he didn't just go out there and play well. He played great for 4 quarters of the game. And the Adam Schefter report came out earlier in the day that, the Giants preferred and their preference is to stick with Russell Wilson. Absolutely. Their preference. As long as Russell Wilson plays well. It's all contingent on Russell Wilson playing well. And he had to go do that. And then afterwards, he says, this game meant a lot to me. I don't, it was time to answer the call. What does that tell you? Russell Wilson felt the pressure. He heard the noise that was coming around him, that the Giants building all heard that noise, that it was closing in on them. So it's a good sign that they responded offensively. And look, do I think their offense is going to look like that every week? No, you can't hit 7 passes of 20-plus yards. That's not even realistic. They still didn't run the ball well. Their offensive line still isn't great. They're going to have problems. Malik Neighbors actually dropped a huge pass, even though he's out of this world. Ridiculous. But like there are things you could sit there and nitpick the offense on, but they were really good in this game. So the opener was awful offensively. Terrible. To me, and Russell Wilson was terrible in that game too. To me, that's the worst of the offense. This was the best of the offense. The reality is they're probably somewhere in the middle. So offensively, that's where we stand. Andrew Thomas still not back. James Hudson, I mean, that was ridiculous. Should have pulled him in the middle of the drive. Brian Daboll kind of made it. He kind of sidestepped the questions, but what I took from it was that he didn't really want to pull him in the middle of the drive. So he let it finish, and then he did it. Okay? But here's the thing with James Hudson. While I've never seen anything quite like this, if you said, name a player on the Giants who would do the unthinkable, something that's never been done in 100 years, according to the Fox broadcast, and commit 4 penalties on the same drive, I would have said James Hudson. Because this is the kind of stuff you see from James Hudson. You're like, what is that guy thinking? And look, I'll be full disclosure. Never had a full conversation. I've never had any conversation with him yet. James Hudson. Just the way it's turned out. We haven't been in the locker room that long. James Hudson's not in there a ton. It's not the kind of guy. I'm not going to search out James Hudson. But when you see James Hudson on the field in practice and training camp, you're like, what is that guy doing? He's basically going up and headbutting Kayvon Thibodeau after one-on-one reps, like constantly getting, bumping guys, getting in their face. Like, you could tell that's how he plays. He plays on the edge. And to me, it signaled that he went over the edge and he lost it. And that's why he should have just pulled him out right away. And then he's yelling and screaming on the sideline. Dude, what are you yelling about? What are you screaming about? They pulled you out because you committed 4 penalties on the same drive. And to be honest with you, I think they were all penalties. Yes, it's the one where he slapped the guy, basically smacked the guy's side of his head. It's unfortunate. He's trying to push him by. That's, the runs to the other side. I get it. You know what he's doing. But when you just full fist or open hand slap the guy in the side of the face, you're going to get called for a penalty. It's that simple. When you hit a guy and push and shove with a guy after the play, you're going to get a penalty. And like that's how this game works. When you leave before the snap, you're going to get a penalty. But the good news, the flip side of that, was that Marcus Bowe came in and he played well. And I talked to Marcus Bowe afterwards. I talked to Greg Van Roten afterwards. And Marcus Bowe, dude, by the way, this guy, cool as a cucumber. It's ridiculous saying my mom used to say when I grew up. I don't know why I said that. One of the lamest things I've ever said on any of these shows. Yeah. But it just goes to show you, he was what was it like, getting in and start basically playing a full NFL game. It was cool. Like this guy, no ups and downs. He is steady. And even when he gets beat, right, he's able to sort of reload and reset and sort of gain his composure. Now, which he did, by the way, on the Russ interception in overtime, kind of got pushed back. If you go watch, there's a bunch of snaps where he does get pushed back. Power is the one thing. And I think they were trying to do that, and especially they're trying to keep Russ in the pocket there. They were just bull rushing their edges. And you saw that it affect them a couple times. Russell Wilson, on the pass that he threw backwards, which was just a crazy play. He tried to hold up his throw, turned his body, actually threw it backwards, so it wasn't even incompletion because he threw it behind the line of scrimmage. But you saw that with Marcus Bowe, and then Russ got a little happy feet on the interception because he got pushed back. I think if he has to start and play long term, we will see some cracks, and teams will try to exploit that. The Giants chipped a lot around him. Made sure they didn't sort of leave him on an island, which you should, which was a smart move, but he was impressive. And Greg Van Roten was telling, and he's, by the way, like the leader of the line. He was telling me after the game that it wasn't even like, you don't even have to, a lot of times the leader on the line has to point out stuff to other guys, especially when it's a rookie and a guy who's sort of just swimming out there, that they didn't even have to do that. for Marcus Bow, which is impressive. And Greg Van Roten said, I didn't even hear from him or notice he was out there, which is a good thing because they noticed too, the offensive lineman, when a guy's struggling and having problems. So the fact that they didn't notice Marcus Bow is a positive sign. All positive signs. The coaches just told him, hey, it's time to go. And he went out there. Nothing, no like speeches, nothing. That's kind of the way it went. Dexter Lawrence also very noticeable in the locker room. And you kind of sense this as something that's building here. The frustration level on Dexter Lawrence. I don't think anyone likes losing. And most of these guys are fed up with losing. But you could see it building with Dexter Lawrence little by little. And he needs to stand there and answer questions. He's a team leader. He's the guy who's paying all his money. And by the way, he hasn't played great this year. He's still coming back from that injury. You kind of expected him to start but he hasn't been a real difference maker, let's say. The highest paid Giants player kind of guy. You haven't seen that from Dexter Lawrence. By the way, it's probably Brian Burns playing like that, not Dexter Lawrence. I think there will be a point where Dexter Lawrence gets there, but he's not there yet. He's still a good player, but he's not Dexter Lawrence, great player right now. Like there's no constantly pushing himself into the backfield, creating pressures. There's like a pressure every now and then. So you could sense that frustration building with Dexter Lawrence. He's ticked off. Where all he kept saying is, first of all, he said we beat ourselves. Too many penalties. And then he kept saying to Paul Schwartz every time Paul Schwartz was asking a question, did you watch the game? Did you see what happened in the game? Like you could sense this frustration with Dexter Lawrence from all the losing. And it's something that I find very noticeable lately. And I think it actually stretches back to next year. So also Dexter Lawrence, guaranteed money next year. We'll see how that goes. That's something I haven't heard anything about, but I might want to keep in mind going forward. I just chuckled because I see Jordan Raanan cool as a cucumber. That's such an old person saying. I don't know. Am I alone? That the only person who's ever heard that? My mom used to say that when you take your temperature and you're not sick and you have like a normal temperature 98. My mom used to be like, cool as a cucumber. So, and then we'll talk about Shane Bowen. Okay.
Pussy.
What? Did you mean to throw that in, by the way? So Bobby, come on. This is a discussion we should have together with Shane Bowen here.
You mentioned Shane Bowen, so I had to pull that up.
I know everybody's mad. I do want to give him, and I said this coming into the season, there's a lot of new pieces there, and it's a defense they're trying to slap together real quick. I did think it was going to take time for them to get to the point, and I know people had sort of these unrealistic like they weren't going to come out and play as a top 5 defense to start the season. I didn't think that. Did I expect them to be better than they were the other day? Yes. I thought part of it was they wore down at the end of the game. And again, I look at the coach for that. He runs a very light camp. You've been there. You've seen it. They look like they were gassed late in the game. You didn't see much for them. Like, you knew that Dallas was going to go down the field every time and score.
The pass rush was gas at the end. It was very noticeable out of all 4 of those guys, really.
Yeah, exactly. Their best pass rusher at the end was Elijah Garcia.
He ranked number 1 in the Giants Nation Show practice squad power rankings. So,
by the way, that's a good idea. I really like that. That was a good idea.
I'm excited to see who gets released, so we can slide Dalen Cambry in there.
So are you on board with? Do you think they need to move on from Shane Bowen already?
So it's without like trying to be like, well, they do this with the safeties. As this is like the way everybody can understand. Is like, what does he do that gives you an advantage, right? And it's really just kind of relying on the pass rush to get there. Where with Wink Martindale blew some end of games, right? Think about the Vikings regular season game where he lines up in a cover 0 blitz. They screen against it. They kick a 60-something yard field goal and win the game. But he had an identity that teams prepared for. Patrick Graham, right? All the rotations, disguised looks, disguising everything, simulated pressures. with Shane Bowen, you just don't have that, and it's just simply it's like, all right, you guys go out there and be better. Go win your one-on-one matchups, and we're going to play man coverage, but we're not going to play a ton of press man. So I think that's where it is now. There's just no someone said I'm using the wrong mic. I am.
How did you not call that out?
Bobby, you go into the settings, hit the microphone, and pick the mic. Was it the quad, whatever?
Yeah, how's that? I got a new.
Much better. That's much better. I didn't think you had, so I can't see your mic. So I assumed you didn't have it set up right now. That's why I didn't tell you to switch.
No, I actually got rid of the old one. Started messing up, so I got a new one after 6 years.
There you go.
But I also understand that, like,
matching mics, very cute over here.
Yes.
Very cute.
I understand with Shane Bowen, though, is the fact that he was not their first hire or first choice, not even their second choice for defensive coordinator. Nobody wanted to work with them. John Mara calls him out after the season. We don't know exactly why he was capped or whatever, but you start like, and this is where I'll ask you is like, why was Shane Bowen kept? You know, with John Mara saying those things, Brian Daboll being kept. Why was Shane Bowen being kept? If they fire him,
that is the same reason Brian Daboll was kept. It's the continuity factor. They didn't want to keep turning it over. And could Brian Daboll really go in there and fight for Shane Bowen to move on from Shane Bowen if he wanted to? No, he was already like, how bad would that look on Brian Daboll? Hey, by the way, you butted heads with the previous defensive coordinator. Now you need to get rid of another defensive coordinator when you went 3-14. And by the way, the defense wasn't the biggest problem last year. Again, as much as they were just okay, they weren't great. They were probably a little bit on the bad side. They weren't even close to the worst unit again. The worst unit was Brian Daboll's unit. So that's why he was kept, because they wanted to give another opportunity again to say, hey, can we be better in year two? Can we build off what we did last year and build on top of things? That's how you get good in this league, when you have some continuity and you keep building on top of it, right? Because you could only install so many things in year one of a scheme and system. The idea is, if you want to be really good in this league, you build something and you keep stacking a little bit more. You can do a little bit more every year. And the good teams, even when they switch guys, they keep the same scheme a lot of times. It's a guy that runs a similar scheme. And that's why I think Shane Bowen is back. Now, I agree. The pass that was allowed, they played too soft at the end with 25 seconds left. At the same time, to be honest, they didn't even just dump off a pass though, and then they threw it 18 yards downfield. They just did a terrible job in coverage. By the way, they said the line was the 50. The two safeties, which actually wasn't two safeties, it was actually Drew Phillips in the middle of the field and Dane Belton. They were 5 yards past the 50, so they're on their own 45. Bobby Okereke was kind of lost, and Jake Ferguson found a spot between the three of them. So to be honest with you, while I don't love the call, it's also just a terrible job of execution. They let a guy between three of them catch an easy pass for 18 yards and get in field goal range.
Sure, but if you go back and rewatch it, the safeties bail as soon as the snap is the ball snap. Go look at the left receiver and the slot receiver. Those guys were more open than Jake Ferguson was.
Yeah, I feel like they weren't all on the same page, because it's almost like
they lined up 10 yards off the line of scrimmage.
Who was the cornerback on the right side? Was it Flott? Yeah,
I can't
Flott
remember.
Flott was almost playing to protect the sideline, which you don't need to do because they already have 3 timeouts anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
But
he's protecting the sideline. Adebo on the other side, he actually cut off his guy and guarded him, because he was running like a little postage type route. So this didn't look like everybody was on the same page. They just drifted back and did a terrible job and allowed a completion right over the middle of the field. Now, I agree, way too soft. But at the same time, terrible job by the guys on the field also to not make a play on the ball, not really pressure the quarterback. They did nothing good on the play.
Sir, worse call than execution, though, right? We like to, every coach talks about execution. If every play call, if executed correctly, is a good play call. We do agree. We do agree. We want them to play deep safeties, though. We want them to play deep and protect the deep area of the field.
That
Yeah.
should be the number one priority. The last thing you can do is give up a deep pass.
But you also know that with that kicker, you can't let them get to the 50. You have the guys lined up 10 yards off the line of scrimmage, so you know the ball's getting out quick. So why are you rushing 4 and not bringing another extra? Like, it just doesn't make sense. But this is where, like, how you talked about John Mara and it eats him up, and I kind of hate that conversation, because it's like, all right, he can be performative angry after a game, but what does he actually do that shows like he's because he's the one who brought every single person back. Every single person's back except for Jerome Henderson. They're 0-2 again. And like you said with Brian Daboll in the open, like, this is probably not getting better, right? Like, this offense had a great game. Defensively, I just don't know if you're going to get a team that plays you like that again. Like, it's very similar to the way the Cardinals played, their lack of talent. Like, the Cowboys are untalented, and they were terribly coached in this game, where Wan'Dale Robinson was just left wide open, right? He wasn't, it wasn't because, they baited this player. No, they just ran verticals, right? It was very simple. They didn't cover them deep.
Their safety too, man. The play he made on the neighbor's catch was so bad. It was unbelievable. The fact that you're playing deep safety and you still let the guy behind you and have to turn your back on the ball when it's Malik Neighbors, like, that's a benchable offense. That was how bad that was. They're not good on the back end. They play terrible on the back end.
But that's where I'm asking, like, how does this team feel? Like, you mentioned Dexter Lawrence, but I also see guys that, Russell Wilson's basically, you mentioned, like, that was big for him. They lost the game. Players, are sharing highlights.
But to be fair, he saved his professional career. That has to mean something. I don't care who you are.
Absolutely. Players are sharing highlights and talking about their good performances. What was the other one I had?
They've been doing that for years. Actually, I have a problem with that, but guys do that around the league. It's crazy.
But they're 0-2, dude. You talked about, like, this, and, like, is this team just conditioned to losing under Brian Daboll? Like, you talk with Dexter Lawrence's frustration. Like, would Dexter Lawrence be as frustrated if he had 8 pressures in this game? It feels like a team that is not devastated by the fact that they are 0-2.
I think there's definitely some element to it. I think in general, though, most guys are pretty furious that they're 0-2 and they want to win. I really do. But yeah, to me, it's more, this team doesn't do the little things to win, right? They don't, not that they don't care enough. It's like, remember that first year, we thought Brian Daboll had all the attention to details solved. As a matter of fact, that turned out to be maybe his biggest weakness. They don't have any of the attention detail solved. The penalties are ridiculous. You keep a guy like James Hudson out there, so it keeps happening. On defense, you could just give crappy effort like Deonte Banks and still be rolled out there. Like, how is Cordell Flott not playing every down? Like, when is it? Like, there was a running play after Banks came in and led up the play to CD. It was either the next play or 2 plays later, where he just olayed a running play where, like,
the Javonte Williams touchdown.
Was it? I don't even think it was the touchdown.
If there was another one, then it was. But that
I think it was
really
another
bad.
one. I think.
Let me ask you this: why is Deonte Banks still playing when Cordell Flott is actually performing pretty well? Like, what is going into? Hey, we got to play both these guys, and we actually got to play Deonte Banks more, because that's not just a Marquand Manuel decision. That is a Joe Shane, Brian Daboll, Shane Bowen, Marquand Manuel, Jeff Burris. No one's making that decision on their own. Why is Deonte Banks continue to play? Who is the one that is suggesting and making that happen?
Yeah, I think they all agreed, and they thought before the season, okay, here's what we're gonna do. He's a first round pick. We want to try to salvage this. Okay. So I think the front office wants to salvage the pick. They don't want another first round pick. Evan Neal's about to be, done here in New York, right? That's coming to an end soon. Dude's not even active, right? He failed at tackle. He failed at guard. That's over, right? Dude was the number 7 overall pick. Jalen Hyatt, that one's dead too, right? He doesn't even sniff the field. He doesn't even play. Okay. They have no confidence in him, the coaching staff. Now you have Deonte Banks, who's another first-round pick of theirs. So they say, okay, how do we try and salvage this? We push him. We try to make him work harder this offseason. Okay, fine. Effort was a problem. We're also make it easier for him. We'll split it. We'll only use him on third downs because we think, and they kind of, Shane Bowen kind of hinted at this, we're going to simplify it for him. Let's see if we could just totally simplify him by putting him in these certain situations. Maybe we can get the most out of him. I think we're almost to the point after that game when they go back and watch the film. I wouldn't be surprised if we're at that point where they decide, you know what, the better player is Cordell Flott. We just have to play him full time.
But
like,
why are they play? Why can't they figure that out and play and figure that out? Like you talked about it, they're 0-2. Like because they had so many offensive points. Like there's a better vibe this week. It's gonna go away. Like it's a week to week business. You know, like for example, the poll right last week. 45% people thought Jackson Dart should start. This week, 8%. It's going to go back to Jackson Dart's favor eventually. This game is not going to be remembered as, well, look what they can do on offense. If the Chiefs come and the Chargers, who are two greatly coached defenses, come in here and do what is very possible they do, they're going to be 0-4. They're going to be 0-4, and there's going to be why are they playing games in year 4 with Deonte Banks? Like that's what why does this regime keep doing shit like this?
Because this is what bad regimes do, Bobby. This is what they do. They make mistakes. First of all, go look at the draft classes now. Remember this great draft class they had last year? Go over. Tell me how good it looks right now.
That's where Malik the John Mayer stuff drives me nuts. How do you fall for the same trick over and over again? Like do not your own guys. Do not declare a draft class a win unless those guys are having rookie of the year type seasons.
Malik Neighbors is awesome. We knew that, right? How do you feel about Tyler Nubin right now?
Missed tackles. He's touched the football one time in his career.
Drew Phillips, I know he was up and down, but he still makes some plays at least.
He's at least making some plays.
I feel like he's a starting slot corner in the league. Not a great player, but he's a quality starting slot cornerback. But after that, where are we at? Theo Johnson.
People want him benched. Tyrone Tracy. Let's move.
Tyrone Tracy. He's basically already been benched. Not really, but you know what I mean.
Let me ask you about that. What's going on with Tyrone Tracy? Because it's not like he had he didn't play good, but it's not like, oh my gosh, look at the bad plays that Tyrone Tracy had week 1. They have him returning kicks. Daboll actually had a good explanation today of why Singletary went out first was because Tracy was, running 80 yards down the field.
Well, then don't put your starting running back put Singletary back there.
Agreed.
First of all, I don't even think Tyrone Tracy's a good kick returner. The other team saw that and said, you know what? We're going to kick it Tyrone Tracy every time because we don't even think he's good. And even after a couple, they're like, you know what? Keep kicking it to him. I mean, tell me, they think they came up with this great idea. Hey, Jamie Gillen's we're going to surprise everyone. We're not going to show it all summer. Jamie Gillen's going to do this special kickoff. Hey, guess what? We're going to put Wan'Dale Robinson back to return kicks. By the way, he got hurt returning the kick, which is just unbelievable.
Yeah,
so that's his ankle.
I'm going to ask another question on top.
And then wait, hold on. Hey, guess what we're going to do? We have the secret plan. We'll hide it from everybody. Tyrone Tracy's going to return kicks. Wow, like they found something that's going to turn everything like these things are such duds. Unmute yourself, Bobby.
What is going on with Tyrone Tracy? Because it's not like Cam Scott, who had -3 rushing yards last week, and it's not to say, he did bad this week, but it feels very early for Cam Scott to just be taking over the RB1 role.
Yeah, he actually had 11 rushes for 24 yards until that big run. That's kind of was only his.
Which again is the offensive line's fault. I think at one point they had more yards after contact than actual yards. But
yeah, but he's not running over, defensive linemen and linebackers in this league very often. Like if he gets out to the outside and he gets open space, they'll truck the cornerbacks and even safeties. He could do some damage against. But he's not going to be shaking off defensive linemen with regularity. He's just not big enough to do that in the NFL. So that's the downside of it. But I think the Giants thought that he could spark that running game and give them something that they didn't have with Tyrone Tracy. So their thing was, let's insert him. I don't think it was as much an indictment on Tracy as it was what they think of Scapegoat and think that he can really spark this team. And really, what their offense is going to look like, Bobby, was those couple plays when Jackson Dart came into the game. Like, that's what they want it to look like ultimately. Like, that's their future, is running those option runs with Jackson Dart and Cam Scatterboo in the future. Like, that, and then throwing the ball off those quick reads, like, it's very much like almost like Washington Commanders style with Jaden Daniels. Like, that's sort of what their future, their offense is.
But how does Tyrone Tracy go to like just that quickly gone, right? Like, because again, the interior offensive line and the tackles too, for that part, have been terrible run block, terrible, right? It's an offensive line issue. It's not a running back issue. But when Tracy had decent run blocking and that quarterback, run threat and defense is not stacking the box on him, like he was playing, like he was having amazing games. He was averaging 80 rushing yards per game. And then, DJ leaves and defenses start playing them differently. You don't have that running threat from Daniel Jones. Like, isn't it kind of crazy for Tracy to go kind of fall out of favor? Like, I understand, they like Scatterboo, but that's a falling out of favor there. He was their running back one to start the year.
Yeah, I am surprised at that. I know the theory is some people said he kind of criticized the offense play calling last week and that this was a result of that. I don't know that. I don't think that that's the case here. I know that they're super high on Scatterboo and he started to get healthier, and I think that probably is more of a factor. And they came up with, this brilliant plan. Hey, you know what? Let's make it more of a split. And we'll also not to minimize Tracy and still get something. We'll use him as our kick returner, and he'll be a weapon there too. And they have these grand ideas that sound good in their head, when in reality, it's all just foolish and a lot of nothing. And it's like, ooh, you spent all this time and that's what you came up with. And to be honest with you, it didn't produce much and didn't give you much again.
Right. Okay. Other questions. You talked a good bit about James. What is going to happen with James Hudson? We've seen guys get banished quick. Mark Lewinsky, right? Like, they were starting Marcus McKeithen over him, who's might be in a period of bad offensive alignment, might be the worst one I ever saw.
That was another great
was like terrible.
What a plan they had. Let's start him and bench Lewinsky and against the 49ers on the road on like 3 days, right? Wasn't it?
But this is like a 3-part question. When is Andrew Thomas coming back? Is Marcus Mbow the flat-out new swing tackle? And is there any chance like James Hudson goes to like inactive/cut?
Not sure about inactive/cut, because that would mean they would have to have confidence in Evan Neal probably, or Andrew Thomas would have to come back. And honestly, the Andrew Thomas stuff, I mean, just look at the results. It's not trending in the right direction, right? To not practice on Wednesday of last week, by the way, he hadn't practiced since Friday the week before, was a bad sign. It means he's not feeling great. He's trying to get back, but it's just not feeling great. And when you have a guy who's 300 plus pounds, Bobby, and maybe he'll be back this week. Maybe let's see what happens on Wednesday when they get back in practice. Long term, I think you need to be very concerned. I had heard he had there's a scale of Liz Frank, he had the worst of the Liz Frank, right? And so when you start coming back and then you start to have setbacks and you're not feeling great, and now we're moving forward, what's to say that he's going to be able to feel good? And I'm not sure if you could ever really expect him to come back now and be the same Andrew Thomas he once was. Is that even realistic at this point?
I'm not even entertaining that. He's going to be great when he comes back.
I mean, you have to be realistic with it, though. This is a very serious injury he's coming back from, especially for a big guy. I'm a little concerned. I'm concerned now about what he is when he comes back. I still think he'll come back, and it'll be fairly soon. I am now more concerned than I was 3 weeks ago about what he's going to – I still think he'll be a really good player, but he might be 80% of the Andrew Thomas that we once knew, because he just will not be as mobile, and, he'll be playing basically through some foot pain.
Right.
That's just going to be his reality.
When do people think he's going to be back within the building? Because they were, shouldn't it be week 1 during training camp, and then, checking in halfway through camp. And it's like, he gets activated off PUP. Whoever, because I know they're not giving you flat out answers, but like the person you trust the most, when does he think Thomas is coming back?
Honestly, I don't think anybody knows for sure. Like, it's like, oh, we'll see how he feels this week, and nobody, like, I think we're already past the point. Like, they thought he was going to be back probably last week. I think last week were the most people I talked, like the people that I asked are like, he'll be back for that game. Like week 1 was kind of tight after he had the slow summer, but now we're at like, we're trying. He's getting on the field for practice. He's got to feel good coming out of that. And obviously, how great did he feel coming out of that when after he practices on the week before, and then they go on Friday, and then they get back on the field the next time on Wednesday, he can't get out there and practice on Wednesday.
Okay.
How good do you think he feels at that point?
Yeah.
And Andrew Thomas, who's super open and honest, is nowhere to be seen in the locker room, by the way, because he doesn't want to go out there and explain it every time. And I'm sure the Giants, said something to him when he was super honest the last time he talked. And, don't give any information about your injury, blah, 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 blah. This is how they operate.
I want to circle back on the James Hudson stuff. Benching a fairly decent investment, right? Oh, we got to take swing tackle serious. That was it. It was a day 1 signing. It was a surprisingly big contract for James Hudson. How does that go over with a GM who made that decision and a head coach who benches him deservedly, but after 1 series in a game and makes it, in reality, a rash, huge decision, although deserved?
I not talking to the general manager, saying, hey, what do you think of James Hudson, losing his mind on the field and committing 4 penalties on 1 drive? Because I'm pretty sure, it infuriated him also. I don't know how you could watch that and even just not shake your head and be like, what the heck is going on here? But yeah, look, this is why when you hear things about the front office looking at the coaching staff and saying, they're not coaching up our players, and then the coaching staff saying we don't have enough players, and it's been a little back and forth the last couple of years. I don't know how it goes down. Like that, those are things, little whispers you hear the last couple of years. But so I'm sure in some way that fits into that equation. But I don't know to what degree James Hudson lost his mind. I wonder what kind of evaluation they had on him in the first place, because like you said, you didn't think he was very good. Everyone I talked to didn't think he was worth that money, and that was a surprise contract. But hey, they took Mark Lewinsky and they benched him. I don't think they're going to be shy to take James Hudson and bury him on the bench. He's like their last resort now. You obviously have to go to Marcus Mbow before you go to James Hudson.
Is there friction between front office and coaching staff with the 53 and the depth chart? When you have Jalen Hyatt make it, Ryan Dunleavy reported they had calls on him. And you could say, oh, well, if it only been a 7-6 pick swap. Like, if you asked me my opinion at that time, I would have done that. But Jalen Hyatt hasn't played a single snap. Jackson Dart became QB2, despite the fact that, the front office built in, Jameis Winston being there as quarterback too, and giving you like some, even if Russell Wilson stinks it up, some buffer if you wanted to make that switch. The Deonte Banks thing, and then now this James Hudson thing, like, is there friction between, they've been in, they talked about lockstep. It came out a little bit about their viewing of the draft process, and they were very clear to talk about, sometimes there's disagreements and stuff. Has things changed between front office and coaching staff since
they
February?
Haven't been lockstep from things that I've heard over the past year. But I will say going into the season, I think that they seem to be on the same page from what I could tell. And that everybody felt good about this team. They thought the team was going to be better than everybody thought. They thought they were going to be able to compete. That's why they got Russ. They thought they would be able to win some games. Now they're sitting here at 0-2 with 0-4 kind of staring them in the face. And that's when the relationship gets tested again. We'll see what happens. I don't know any details of it, to be honest with you, at the moment. But I know in the past, I'm not talking about in the last few months, but at the end of last year, there was a lot of, little talk about that and chatter, and people I spoke to from around the league that have talked to people with the Giants kind of mentioned, hey, is there a little, front office, little divide between the front office and coaching staff? It kind of seems like it. I doubt it just naturally healed itself to the point where they all feel great about each other. But I think they did go into the season feeling good about the team they put together, and they thought it was going to be significantly better than it was, and what we kind of thought it was.
Okay, I think I'm basically done with questions. So if the chat wants to get some in, and we'll hit some. I was going to ask you about the Adam Schefter article Saturday night about the no sense of urgency to play Jackson Dart. They would prefer Russell Wilson to be the starter going forward. Like, again, I won't ask you who's pushing you that out, because you can't give that answer anyways.
Yeah, that's one I can't get into from my perspective. Also, I can't even.
It's just a very funny quote where it's like they're in control of when Jackson Dart plays, but that article makes it seem like, well, if we may have to go to him way earlier than we want to because we're doing this out of desperation. Which, granted, Russell Wilson.
Look, it's all contingent on Russell. They in a perfect world, they don't want Russell Wilson, to be benched. They want him to play well and win games. Okay.
Yeah. But now, if he's playing decent and they're losing games, then that's where it gets like.
Well, there'll be a point where when you lose enough games, you have to put in Jackson Dart.
Yeah. Which
we all know that, right? This is common sense.
Yeah.
If they lose enough games, the pressure will be on them to win, to at least produce something, at least start, setting up the future. So the goal is always this. John Mara says at the end of every season, don't ever forget. He says, I want to feel good about the direction of the franchise when I walk off the field in the final game of the season.
Yeah.
You don't feel good right now.
No, I don't. Like, I don't take that, again, like I said it at the end of, Giants Nation show last night. Check it out. Where I'm like, my fear coming away from this game is you got an untalented defense, and like even their one really good player, Trevon Diggs, is like in a one-on-one matchup that he loses against Malik Neighbors. And I just was like, why are they playing defense like this? It was similar to Gus Bradley with the Colts. What was it? Ed Donatel with the Vikings, where I'm like, why are you playing this way? Where you're not going to face many more defensive coordinators and untalented defenses like that going forward. But I think where they could get that pass rush can hit a little home and not have Dak just shredding them. But regardless, like that offensive performance makes me feel good. It's like, all right, Russ still's got the deep ball, where that was a little worry after week one. It doesn't make me think, oh, they figured it out offensively. So let's get to the questions. Let's see. I do need ideas for a positive plane, which is very, very hard.
That is a funny quote. Just put James Hudson on defense.
Yeah, let's there's a couple people saying that. Let's see. Why is nobody hitting the like? That's a great question, Dr. Pancake.
Yeah, everybody make sure you like, subscribe. Also, Giants Nation show Breaking Big Blue. Filibustering to let Bobby find some questions. Everybody, please fire away with questions.
Yeah.
Here, Max Emker says, are the Bengals going for Jameis?
Why am I seeing that? Oh, Max Emker. He actually lives in Brevard County. Shout out. I know.
There you go. So here's what I'll say about that. Everyone's like, well, the Bengals need a quarterback. Did you see how Jake Browning played? Like, they're going to think that Jake Browning is their starter. Like, they're not going to go trade for a starter. Now, maybe they want a veteran backup for him, but it's not like they're going to be like, oh, we want to go, pay something for Jameis Winston. The Giants, they weren't really that interested in moving Jameis this summer or at the end of the summer. And now you only have two quarterbacks, right? So I don't know if they're going to be that willing to want to move Jameis for what are you going to get in return, Bobby? Very minimal.
Day 3 pick. I don't think it's worth it.
Even day 3, like I don't even think you get a 5th rounder for him.
I don't know. Like I just have never really taken the Jameis stuff. I know it's a conversation where other teams say it, but I've never felt serious about that.
And they like Jameis. To be honest with you, the Giants value Jameis for what he brings. Like, you see, he's the guy like preaching to everyone on the sideline, calming James Hudson, talking to Tyrone Tracy, sitting at his locker after the game. Like, he could have that conversation with Jackson Dart, bring different ideas for Dart. The Giants do value that with Jameis Winston, even if he's not playing. So there is a value to that to them. We could all disagree whether it's worth it, but
Sean Sullivan, I want to ask this because Brian Daboll has clashed with coordinators in the past, and we know that they've tried to put a bow on it. But like, even if Brian Daboll wanted to get rid of Shane Bowen last year, it wouldn't have made sense because it's like you're never going to get anybody that you want to take this job. But again, it's very early in the season. Is there strife between him and frustration with even the way maybe even Kafka called the offense in week 1 or Shane Bowen in both games?
Yeah, I haven't really heard it if it is yet. I mean, it's still really early. I think that the defense, at least going into week 2 here, was very positive about where they were at, right? They didn't play a terrible game in week 1. They were okay. They had their ups and downs a little bit, but I think they were feeling pretty good about where they were in week 1 and good about Shane Bowen going into week 2. We'll see if maybe he lost some guys in this one, but I don't think we're there yet. It's still too early for that.
Yeah. Antonio Vidal says, do you expect any signing at linebacker with all the injuries?
Yeah, if Darius Musow doesn't play, they're starting to get short there. But I did hear Demetrius Flanagan-Folds is sort of like a week-to-week kind of guy, so he might end up being back soon. That would be big because he was probably next in line to play after Darius Musow if he wasn't injured. So we'll see if he can get back this week. I think that would certainly help that situation.
Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to find some
Somebody
questions.
just said bigger role for Golston. I don't know how you get a bigger role for Golston. I don't think he could play inside linebacker if that's what you're inferring.
He did play better this week than he did week 1 in his limited time. But yeah.
But I'm just saying, where are you going to find a bigger role for him? You want to get Thibodeau, who I think is actually playing pretty well.
Most improved player.
Brian Burns, who's their best player right now. And obviously Abdul Carter, you want all them to play. So like, how are you getting Golston a bigger role? I don't see it.
Yeah, if I did my award show right now, Kayvon Thibodeau would be most improved. I got a cut up coming on him tomorrow. Let's see. How many kick returners will we sign? It's funny because the practice squad is full of like capable of returners with like Amir Smith. Like, that's it. Like Amir Smith-Marset can return. Why the fuck is Jalen Hyatt on the roster getting 0 snaps when you could have Smith-Marset back there? That's actually a great question. You know what? Ask Brian Daboll that on Wednesday. Why are you keeping Jalen Hyatt on the roster as your wide receiver 5 to not do shit when Amir Smith-Marset could actually be returning kicks for you? Now I'm pissed off. Sean said, I heard Nate Ebner can play linebacker.
Yeah.
Never forget the Bears game. That was Joe Judge's guy.
That was Joe Judge's guy. Nate Ebner was a big special teamer once upon a time. I will still. I just got a text from someone. Obviously, I'm not going to tell you who it was, but it's very interesting. It says Brian Daboll almost refuses to practice those end of half and end of game situations live in practice as a complaint of some of the things he's done in the past. So you might be curious and say, you know what? Maybe that makes sense of why at the end of the game they kind of have been a mess here.
Yeah.
And they're not winning the close games. Those kind of things matter. Like we said, those attentions to detail. If you don't stress those, if you only practice it, he does. Obviously, it doesn't mean they'd never do it. But in comparison to what other coaches and other teams do, I think he does it on the lesser side. And, the results kind of show there.
Yeah. So I want to give you a little Jordan on the beat. How was Arlington? How was the food? I know it's like the best place. And I saw the security line. They're making the players check their bags and all that stuff. It looked very funny seeing them in all their weird outfits, having to like just stop and stand in a line and get their stuff checked.
Yeah, that's how Dallas is. It's a very weird place. I'm talking about in the stadium. It's a huge, like the bowels of the stadium. It's super wide. The buses come in, but they pull up right to the locker room. So it's really the only place that the bus can actually pull up to like the locker room door. So then there's buses and then like a little, they only have to walk like 2 feet to get into the locker room and they have to go through security and everyone's like stuffed in there. It's a strange place. I'm trying to find, I went to this place in Dallas. It wasn't actually Dallas because you don't actually go to Dallas really. I think it was called like Stadium or something. So it was a bar and it was like something I've never seen before, actually. If my computer would work, I would be able to find it and it would come up. And so it's almost like a huge warehouse, right, Bobby? And
I'm familiar with warehouses.
no, but it's set up where the view is, it's like basically like a camera live from the stadium. So the Texas A&M game is on against Notre Dame. And it's the way it's set up. It's like you're sitting in the mezzanine level and you have a view live from the field. And then in the back, there's these TVs. It's like gigantic sports bar. That's just incredible. It was like nothing I've ever seen, like an awesome concept of a sports bar in I wasn't even in Dallas. I don't even know where I was. Probably in the Fort Worth area. So I did not go get the hard eights with the rest of the Giants reporters in the LPG get together, which I usually go to. But I went to our Cowboys reporter's house. We sat outside, watched some college football. But yeah, that was Dallas for you.
And that's Dallas.
So I don't know. You ever been there?
No, which I actually might, because we were thinking of doing the double dip of the Shrine Bowl and the Senior Bowl this year, and they do it at the AT&T. At least they did last year. So me and Grump and everybody, the whole crew, my wife, everybody, we might go to there this year.
Well, I'll talk about Dallas in a second. But I heard you talking with Grump. Grump was like, yes, like I want to know why they played Marcus Bow at left tackle. Like, were they down on James Hudson? And my answer to that is this. It's simple. If Marcus Bow is going to be active on game day, he's going to be a reserve lineman. You only have so many reserve linemen, right? You have to have him ready to be play on both sides, especially when James Hudson had a chance of starting week 1. You need him to be able to basically be able to play any position. Because what do you how many linemen you have active? Sometimes you only have 8 linemen active. And if 2 linemen get active, you basically need these guys to be able to at least play and survive at any position.
Yeah.
So I think the Giants just needed, and they do this with everybody. You need to make sure at least they have some positional flexibility, especially when you're a reserve player in the league. So they got to a point in the summer where they said, he's going to be one of our reserve linemen. We can't just be like, he's our reserve lineman. He can only go in at right tackle. That doesn't make sense. You can't even carry a guy basically on game day on a line that can only play one position. So you have to cross-train him at left tackle. That was the answer to that.
There was a clear shift after that first preseason game of putting him at left tackle, though, where he played left tackle only in the second 2 preseason games, where he was mostly a right tackle throughout camp.
He said he really didn't play it that much, though, to be honest with you, when I talked to him after the game. Because he really didn't do it that much this summer, which I was surprised that he said that, because I was like, oh. Yeah, Stadium Sports Grill in Dallas. Yeah, I think that's what it's called. And you got to check this out, this place. It is like something I've never seen. It was a really, really cool spot. And then watching the Texas A&M game there was a great game. I don't know if you watched it.
I didn't, actually. Porter Potty Breath says Jordan sucks. Doom and gloom. He's an Eagles fan. He sucks. All right, let's close this out. That was the last chat of the night.
grew up in New Jersey, by the way, and not in Philadelphia. I went to Philadelphia because my wife is from there and I worked there. So it's the dumbest thing that people always have to say about me. I grew up in the New York area. I literally have John Starks here. I got Ranger stuff, Yankee stuff everywhere. And I'm an Eagles fan. Think about that. Stupid.
Yeah, you're a hater. All right.
Sleeping with the enemy. Yes, that's true. And I didn't grow up in South Jersey. I grew up in a Manhattan suburb. It's not.
What was the address? What's your address?
I actually grew up in Marlboro, New Jersey. Look it up. It's definitely not a Philadelphia, South Jersey suburb. It's Central Jersey. The line of demarcation is Hamilton, Trenton area. That is a fact.
People are coming after you right now.
Yeah, they don't understand. They don't know. They probably don't even live in New Jersey. They probably live in like Florida, like the Panhandle, like near Daytona or some garbage like that.
Well, the Panhandle's not Florida. The Panhandle is like Florida's not part of the South, except for the Panhandle. The Panhandle is the South,
right? And people say exit 7. Chris Dickinson here said that's like the line of demarcation. When you come to my house, when I come home from Giants Stadium or whatever it's called, these is MetLife Stadium, I get off at exit 13. That is clearly not Philadelphia.
Port St. Lucie. What's up, Elvis? I'm about an hour north of you.
But hey, here's what I do want, though, okay? Because I saw that one of the comments said this, and me and Bobby have had a conversation about it. And today it was impossible to avoid the games because they're started at 7 o'clock today. I honestly didn't get home from Dallas until like 6:30 in my house. But would people prefer Tuesday? This way it doesn't come near the games at all. Bobby's not into Tuesday.
No, Tuesday's crazy busy for me, but Monday I think is the best time to get it out. If you're not doing it Monday, then we should put it like end of the week, like everything you heard from it. It's just let's try and go for 7. Like you said, today was a doubleheader Monday Night Football. You can't do anything about that. But Monday at 7, I think is pretty damn good every single week. It's a nice lead into like who the hell wants to watch ESPN pregame? Like not me.
Hey, relax. I want to watch ESPN's pregame. That is the pregame you need to watch every week. As always, like, subscribe, tell your friends. Breaking Big Blue times Giants Nation show. I almost said Giants Sports Nation again, Bobby. See, I got it right this time. I'm Jordan Raanan. He's Bobby Skinner. See you next time.